What's up, YouTube? Welcome to the channel. This is Robert Linkle with TrainingTheOlderAdult.com. Wanted to talk to you today about National Geographic's Limitless, starring Chris Hemsworth. Now, just to be clear, just to let everybody know right away, I am going to talk about this entire show. If you have not seen it yet, don't watch this, okay? Unless you want some spoiler alerts, because there's a couple of things in here. I'm going to give you my honest opinion. We're going to dive into some of the more sensitive topics, and especially the end, we are going to blow that right open. So if you haven't seen it and you're like, don't blow it, Rob, I want to just give me a teaser, that's not this. I am going all the way through it. So stop watching, come back, watch us later. If you're not going to watch the show and you just want to hear my recap, I'm going to give you everything. We're going to go through, I got 900 slides here we're going to go through. We'll do that. And if you like the content, please subscribe, ring the bell, tell your friends, help us grow the channel. Any and all help there, helping us get more eyes on our videos would be greatly appreciated. Okay, so Limitless, National Geographic, it's on Disney Plus as the main carrier there. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. 2 thumbs up, 5 stars, like whatever. The second it got done, I looked at my wife, I dried my eyes, I looked at my wife and I said, everybody should watch this, especially our parents. Like that was a big thing for me. They cover 6 different chapters. Some of my favorite people in our industry, in our profession, are in this, and I just could not be happier with it. I thought when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is going to be Hemsworth doing, you know, he's a thrill seeker, and he's going to be skydiving and surfing and doing all these things that are like extremist, and he's, you know, seeking out his personal limits, and it's not that at all. Like there's definitely moments where he's doing stuff for that, and there's a scientific purpose behind it. So I loved it. Across the board, it's been very popular, been well received. There's definitely some scary things about it. There's some great things about it. So anyhow, without further ado, let's dive into this. Okay, so right from the get-go, there's quite a few different articles that you can read about this. It kind of talks about Chris's response to the show. There's definitely some people that kind of discuss and like look at his body and how it changes through the show, which we'll discuss as well. I was shocked at some of the changes that he's able to make through there. So you'll be able to see a lot of different things to get a lot of different input on this. All right, episode number 1 is about stress, okay? It's all about stress. He starts off with the idea, he's in Australia, he's with his buddies, and he's looking up at this tower, and he goes, hey, I'm gonna do this crane walk, and I wanna see how my body responds, and then I'm gonna do something. So to start it off, okay, I'm gonna do the crane walk. So to train for it, he goes, I know when I get up there, okay, he's 100 and something stories in the air. He goes, I know when I get up there, I'm gonna flip out a little bit. It's really high, my heart rate's gonna go through the roof, I could freeze up, this and that. So he's gonna train, okay? So he goes to a therapist, and this is her. I don't know her name, apologies, but she's in almost every episode, so you'll see her in there. She's great. And they start to do virtual training, okay? So he's got his VR mask on, he's on a 2x4, and he's, everywhere he looks, he's on top of this on top of the crane, and when he looks down, I'll show you a picture in a second, there's, you know, 100 stories below. So he's training, and they're watching his heart rate and watching his emotions and all this as they go through, and oh man, it's going through the roof. She starts talking to him about different breathing techniques and different mindsets, and not to look down and to focus straight ahead, and like, it's very, very cool. There are great strategies that come out of this for when you are stressed, how you can handle it, okay? In a physical stress like this, but also like emotional, work-related stresses, etc. So then his buddy gets on there, and he's like telling his buddy, okay, you gotta keep moving. The guy's like, I don't know, and he pushes him, and the guy, and he falls. It's very funny. Good scene. All right, so other training that he does to learn to deal with some of the stress. And now, very big reminder and warning, Chris went through a lot. I'm going to talk about him like he's my buddy. Chris and I, we're like this, peanut butter and jelly. He went through a lot of training. So it wasn't like he just got there and they were like, all right, you're in with the SEALs, you know, good luck. Let's tie your hands together and throw you into the pool. Like anyone would completely freak out. He went through some training for this, but his hands are bound together, okay, behind him. And they tell him, hey, you got to bob down all the way down. I think it's 15 or 20 foot, whatever it is. All the way down, you got to bounce off the bottom, get a breath, come back down. You have to do 5 or 7 in a row, something like that. So he goes, hey, every time, if you don't do exactly what I tell you, it's a fail, okay? So he goes through the whole thing. He has to like do flips. He has to do a length of the pool and back. The whole time his hand's tied behind his back. So he gets out, fail, 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 fail. The guy's like, what a disappointment. And he goes, yeah, I'm really bummed at myself, Chris. So then he talks to his lady, and the lady's like, here are a couple of these strategies. She talks about 4-second breathing. I think that comes up a little bit later on. Box breathing, 4 seconds in, 4 seconds hold, 4 seconds let it out, 4 seconds hold. That might not be in this particular situation, but it's something along those lines. And that might be when he's doing the fire, he gets into the fire academy and starts putting out fires and heat. I think it's in that. And they talk about like when you're under fire, literally under fire, but also like, you know, police and SWAT and such. Okay. So he goes, okay, take 2. So now he's more focused, more confident, goes in with a mindset of I can do this, etc. Does much better, scores better. Very cool, does all kinds of different things where he's retrieving things from the bottom of the pool with goggles where he's blacked out so he can't see where he's going. I mean, it was really neat. So he gets up at the end of this episode, gets up on the high beam, and that's him walking. Again, this is a picture of a picture. If you see my fat bells and the reflection behind it. That's him on this, 100-foot, if not more, crane walking out there. And granted, he is, he's carabinered in. He's attached in by a safety rope, but he's walking on this 2-foot plank, and he crushes it. Like he goes walking out there, his heart rate's like, I don't know, 150 or something like that. And it's like, it's going. So he gets to the end, and you see him close his eyes for a minute, and he lowers his heart rate down to like 70 or 80. Like he really gets it back down using some of these techniques. So it was very cool. It was a great episode. Right out of the bat, I'm like, this is pretty cool. I could get into this. We threw on Disney Plus to watch a kids movie, and I saw this, and it was my birthday, the night before my birthday. And so the kids are like, we can watch whatever you want to watch, Dad. And I'm like, let's watch this thing with Hemsworth, right? So first episode, we're in. We're hooked now, okay? So it's like, I don't know, 5 o'clock. We watched this till 8:30, right? I mean, we watched 4 episodes, and then the next morning, nobody could get up quick enough to go and watch the next 2 because we were so excited to finish it. Okay, so the next one is about shock. And so now they're gonna do cold therapies and they're gonna do hot therapies. And this is where my boy, Peter Attia, comes in. Okay, this is super cool. So the first one, he's gonna surf on these cold water waves, getting in the cold water to help him do the surf and to help him do this like 250-meter cold water swim. He brings in one of his buddies who does all these super extreme things, but the guy's great at being in cold water. So they just walk to the end of the dock and like jump in their shorts into like 37-degree water, like, just above freezing. Like they had to break the ice to get into it, but it's this super cold ass water. And he makes it like 3 minutes. When he gets out, his body turns red, and like you can see he's starting to panic a little. His hands, he's like, I can't feel my fingers. I can move them, but I get no feeling. My face, my ears are going numb. So they have to warm him back up, all this. Like, hey man, even with the suit, like you're still gonna get cold. You've got to learn not to panic when you get the initial like the shock and the breath and all that, which I've done polar plunges in Tahoe. I got to do one in Alaska. Like I've done those, and I know that shock. I know that, immediate response. People have heart attacks from that all the time. And a lot of times people fall in the water, they die from drowning because of the heart attack, not because they, only made it 3 minutes and their bodies froze. It's because of the shock of the cold. So how to prepare yourself, how to mentally prepare and go, hey, cold isn't that bad. I know what I'm going to get into, etc. Very, very cool. He surfs. He's a great surfer. He's been surfing since he was 12. He goes through the whole thing. He and his buddies. That was really neat. Has this great experience. Super cool. And then he does the open water swim, which was very neat too to see that one. They had to come and kind of like not rescue him, but they have to get him out of the water when he's done. He's completed it, but they have to like hoist him up onto this thing because his body's like starting to shut down. His brother and his buddies are all there. 2 of his brothers and his buddies are all there to kind of cheer him on. It was really cool. It was neat. It was emotional to see how emotional he was about accomplishing this. It was very cool. And then they go into like heat, and they talk about the stress and the heat. This is where the box breathing comes in. He talks with the firefighters, trains with them for a little bit, and then kind of wraps it up here with like heat exposure and what the body kind of goes through. So cold water therapies, right? Dunking into cold ice bath, up to maybe 2 or 3 minutes. Very good for the body. They recommend like 2 to 3 times a week, if not more often if you want to build up to that. But at minimum, a good 15 to 30 seconds at the end of your shower. So you get in the shower, all warm, open all your pores, clean everything off. When you're done, turn the water as cold as you can take it, and just take that shock, take that cold. Your body has a hormonal response to that. There's a anti-inflammatory response to that. There's a pep and an endorphin rush from the shock of the cold that preps you and like gets you ready for your day. Obviously, don't do this right before you want to go to sleep, but in the, you're kicking your day off, you did your workout, now get all the dirties off you, get all the smellies out of you, and then it also closes up your pores too. So when you get out, you're not opening your pores to the environment of all the warmth and the moisture and everything else that you just showered in. You've already got everything kind of closed up because of the cold and the shock. And there's a very good therapeutic response to this. Great response for longevity of life, clarity of mind, et cetera, et cetera. Now on the other side, sitting in these guys in the saunas and the hot, the hot environments, 100 to 130, I think, in terms of, if not more, like, don't quote me on that, but like the temperatures they get in there are very hot exposures. It's good for the lungs, but if it gets too hot, it can damage your lungs. So there is the right amount. There's specific woods that they sit in, specific rocks and different things that you use. I want to build one of these. I want to get one of these and have this as a therapy because there's so much value to this, especially if you're in a cold environment where you can be in that inside warm, go outside into cold and back and forth. So a lot of places will do this and then go jump in the snow and lay in the snow for a minute and then go back into here and then go jump in the snow. This happens everywhere. When I went to Iceland, within 10 minutes of landing, okay, they had us to a bathhouse where we were able to do like 100 and then I want to say 105 degree water, maybe 110. I think that was the one that I couldn't handle. It was too hot for me, where we could submerge. And then we got into literal ice chunk barrels where we submerged into ice and went back into this one and back into that one. And the therapy of going back, I never felt so good. In the moment, shocking hot, shocking cold, but never felt so good than having that. I used to do cold therapy at the end of every training when I was in college. We had all the buckets out there. Then there was a time where they're like, the cold is bad for you. It's super dangerous. It's not doing what it's doing. Apparently it's in again. I've always thought that it was a very therapeutic and good thing to do, to the point where a lot of people have ice baths and they're very expensive, but they make ice coolers where you can basically, it looks like a big coffin, right? And it'll hold ice for like 8 or 10 days. So you don't have to fill it up every day. Anyhow, just the simple shock of cold water in the shower, 15 to 30 seconds at the end of every shower, could be very therapeutic in this process. And there again, he's with his buddies. And here, here's Peter again. Peter was fantastic in this. I'm such a fan of him, Dr. Peter Attia. Again, another guy I'll talk about, like I know him. This one, the fasting one, and maybe the pool one, maybe I mixed up some of those episodes. Anyhow, the fasting one, this one, he goes 4 days without eating. And I've had surgery before where, hey, you can't eat after midnight, right? And your surgery's at 9 a.m. And so I'm like, 9 hours, not so bad. I really know I got to be there at 9, probably not going to actually start surgery till 10:30 or 11. So I'm like, okay, I'm looking at 11 hours plus recovery, probably, 4 or 5 o'clock. Like I'm not going to eat until 6. So I'm probably looking at about 18 hours without eating. Well, in these surgeries, I will literally wake up at midnight and eat a full meal because I get hangry. Like my body starts to hurt that I don't have food in it every 3 to 6 hours. I know it's pathetic, but that's me. I can't fast. I take too many medications as well. I only have 2 of them, but I take medications that require food. So I can't fast like the way that it's supposed to be done, okay? So we'll have days where these surgeries come about. I've had enough now, 16, to where this became an issue, where I would eat at midnight knowing that I'm probably not gonna eat until 6 or so. Well, the last one we had, I didn't go in. I was supposed to go in at 9. I got bumped all the way back to 3. I ended up getting home at like 10 o'clock at night or whatnot and ended up going like 28 hours or something without eating. And in that process, you get to a point where you are not hungry anymore. And then you're starving. You're ravenously starving, and then you're not hungry again. And if you can keep your mind distracted, which we had some things going on, it's really not all that bad. This is one day, okay? So I'm thinking like, maybe I could do 2, maybe, if I really had to. 4 days? I mean, fuck that. Like 4 days? No way. So I'm like, he's not gonna make it. Peter's done this a bunch of times, etc. He's not gonna make it. His buddies are all doing it with him. They all end up bailing out after a day and a half. They're sitting around eating pizza, making fun of him. He makes it all 4 days. And you can tell he's pretty miserable. He looks very emaciated. His face starts to get, sucked in. He's allowed to have water and I think some vitamins and such, but that's it. Crazy part, like day 3, he's still there cooking bacon and eggs for his kids and like still being a dad, doing his thing, but not eating any of the food. I don't know if I could do that. Anyhow, the fasting one, though it's cool and I think it's a great thing, and he goes through and it shows his body, and Peter goes through like all the responses the body has to the fasting process, and how they have these zombie cells in your body that are eating away at you, clogging up, taking up space, and when you don't give it anything to eat, basically, they start to die, and then they actually turn around and they start to produce better, like a health process, and eventually help cleanse and like pull everything out of you. So you have to like starve it to death, though, basically, to get it to that point. And in that, they're just like, let's go for a hike, let's go do this. Like, they're doing anything they can to kind of distract them and keep them out of this. And then as they're fasting, they're like, we're going to go out on a hike, and then in this process, we're going to teach you how to hunt. And that's another part of this, which we kind of get into the memory and some of the other ones, is like, we're too convenient and focused on our food is right here. Our meals are all scheduled. Our phone is right there. We can order food. Like, everything is so simple. In this process, you're going to starve for 4 days, and then you're going to have to hunt for your meal. And if you don't get it, you're not going to eat. We're going to go on to a 5th day. And so Peter's like, dude, I don't mean to give you more pressure, but I didn't go and train how to use the spear gun. Only you did. So now it's your job to feed us, because remember, Peter's doing it with him. So they're on this beach, they go, diving in, and he spears this fish, and they bring it up, cook it, and they've got all kinds of veggies and all this other stuff. And you're thinking like, dude, they're just gonna ravage and just dive into this. I'm sure they're starving. And both of them are like, not that hungry. Like, they've got to a point where they're like, I could see where people could go multiple days, still function, maybe not feel great, but still function. And then just be like, hey, we got lucky today. We got a fish or a deer or whatever it is, and have their meal and enjoy it, and be like, we're probably going to be 2 or 3 more days until we get another one. And it's like kind of getting back to that, like that root. And I'm not saying this is what we all need to do. I'm just saying, like, that's the process. And the thought process is kind of resetting the body to be not so dependent on, yo, it's been 3 hours. You better, stuff some more calories in here like I do, right? So he's jumping off cliffs. He's got his other buddy with him, this guy's like running 10 marathons with a log on his back, no shit, like all this stuff. And Keegan and I are looking at each other like, why? Like, why would you, why not just be whatever? Like, he's doing these crazy, crazy things, but the guy is like a physical specimen of a human being, and you can tell he really knows his stuff. It was super entertaining just watching him. They learn how to row. They go and do all kinds of other stuff, okay? Very, very cool. Now, I think I jumped the shark, and I did... Where's strength? I think I did it this way. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this one first. I did it this way because 4 was my favorite episode, the strength one, okay? The last one, 6, was the most impactful, and I want to talk about those last, so I think that's why I switched these. Okay, so we'll come to 4 in just a second, strength, but then we go into memory, okay? And this is where he ends up going on a big, long hike. They start off by going into this. He meets the tribesmen. They talk about, at the beginning of this one, Peter sits down, does his blood work with him, and he goes, hey, this is where things kind of get heavy, okay? He goes, hey, we've discovered that you have 8 to 10 times greater chance of getting Alzheimer's disease than the average person does. That this is a very, and he goes, well, yeah, my granddad has it right now. And he goes in between, having an accent and not, remembering who we are or not. He goes, it's very much so in my bloodline. And so now they're like, yeah, you have like one parent that was and one parent that wasn't. And as those chains went down, you ended up with both parents have the chain, and you definitely, have this high potential. And so you could see Chris's face is like, he's obviously distraught about it, hearing this. And he goes, okay. And he's like, so what do we do? And he goes, well, he goes, I am 100% convinced that if we do these things well, you reduce, massive stress from your life, you work on quality, and he's obviously super fit. So exercise is not a huge thing that you're going to have to like talk him into, but mental prep, clean food that you're putting into your body, minimize drinking or drugs or any of that stuff. I don't think he has any issues with that stuff from what I could tell. Like, just, living the cleanest life he can. That's where you'll see a lot of these articles that talks about Hemsworth is going to take some time away from the movies. He wants some more time for himself. He needs to step back, etc. It's because of this episode, okay? Which that scene is pretty heavy. And you can see Peter being a doctor, and he's got an awesome story too. If you guys don't know about him, like, go check him out and hear about his story and how he's created the offerings of content and education he has now. He's, again, one of my heroes. So You can see Peter has the experience in talking to people like this, because this would have been I would have been sitting there blubbering, having to tell him this. It's not a death sentence by any means, but it's not great news, right? Like it's eight to 10 times more. Like that's a lot, that's a lot more than just like, hey, we found this. It's like 8 to 10 times more likely than anybody else you see walking around here that you're going to get, this disease. And I think it's the one, I'm most afraid of it, because I don't want to get to a point where I don't remember who I'm talking to or who I am or what these chunks in time that I'm missing. I would say, other than leaving this world early due to cancer, I would say that's probably the thing that I would be concerned most about with is not keeping my I don't even know how to say it, like being able to recognize me, right? And know like a period went by where people came to see me and I didn't know who they were and they're my kids. Like that kind of thing would just damage me. Once lucid and like back, I would just be so damaged. I would just like, I don't want to deal with this. Anyway, neither here nor there. You can tell that he takes it really hard. So they go on hikes. He gets out, out into the wilderness. He's out there with his friend. They talk about different strategies, things he needs to remember. They work on mindsets and training his brain. He gets an assessment where he's doing different taps on his thigh to figure out if he's, anyhow, all these things. He learns how to meditate and how to do these different breathing techniques. This gal can breathe and like hold her breath for 5 minutes while she deep sea dives, I think, or like spelunks or whatever it is. Anyhow, again, I might be mixing a couple of these together. I was trying to find the right pictures to go with each one, but it really talks a lot about the mind and how it's not something that we look at secondary anymore. Oh, you've got body and nutrition, and no. Like this is something that has to be trained as well. There's a cognitive part to all that we're doing that really needs to be addressed. And it comes in with really good, healthy, organic foods that you're putting through your body, especially your fruits and your vegetables. Feed your brain, the meat, and all that needs to be as, minimally as organic or as clean a meat as you can possibly find. Definitely not McDonald's meats, etc. Not, throwing anybody under the bus, but you guys get what I'm saying, okay? All right, so now my favorite episode, number 4, not just because you're like, oh, the strength coach likes strength. Now, this gal here, she's like an 80-year-old bodybuilder. You've probably seen some, there was a ton of hype around her maybe 4 or 5 years ago, maybe a little further back, where she was winning bodybuilding shows. Didn't start bodybuilding, I want to say, until like the 60s. Cool part is every episode's not just about Chris. Like they find another kind of like regular non-celebrity person that they can highlight in each of these that has a similar situation going on with him, okay? So into the strength one, the challenge comes up that the strength coach, I forget his name, apologies. Awesome dude, I don't remember his name. Not someone I was super familiar with. He asked Chris, he goes, hey, I want to do this thing. I just want you to do something that's hard. I want to train you to do something that you've never done before, that's in a stressful situation that will require a lot of physical strength and endurance. So they decide he's going to climb a 100-foot rope hanging out of that cable car over a 1,000-foot gorge, right? Which it's like, of course, that's what you pick for a superhero to do. So Chris starts training for this, and he's about 205, 210, something like that, body weight, 95 kilos, somewhere around in there, 97 kilos, something like that, okay? So he starts training, realizes, oh, I'm gonna have to kind of change my body for this. I need to be lighter, leaner, a little more endured. He learns how to climb a rope. He gets really good at it, starts going. He's got a couple of weeks until he starts training to be Thor for the new Thor movie, okay? Which he's gonna have to bulk up. So he starts the bulking phase. As he's doing this, he's getting heavier. He's now 215, 220, 225 pounds. And it's just getting harder and harder to climb this rope. In training that, he falls, sprains, tears some ligaments in his ankle, and they're like, look, dude, you just got to go do the movie. We'll come back to this, okay? So they show him go through the movie process and how he bulks. And yes, he lifts super hard, okay? But he gets fucking jacked, like so big jacked over 3 months. I mean, unheard of big. Shoulders are huge, his arms are huge. I mean, there are these pictures of like episode 1 to episode 4, and it's like, holy shit, that's a whole different person. I mean, it's a there's creatine, there's something going on there that is not of the most natural, or it's the best personal training / strength coach / nutrition / cutting that I've ever seen in my life, where he just looks massive and literally goes up to 235, 240 pounds, something like that. And he's just huge, okay? So they film the movie, they show how huge he is, and it's like, oh, that's CGI when you see the movie. It's not CGI, that's him. He's literally that big, okay? The scene where Russell Crowe is Zeus, and he like, when all of his clothes blow off, that's him, dude. That's really him. All of those muscles, he's all, swollen and all pumped up. He was lifting tons of weights on the scene. I mean, it's awesome, right? And the whole time I'm just like, I can't believe how big he is. I can't believe it. The whole time I'm just like totally geeking out, like male, bro crushing over him. Good looking dude, but when you're like that jacked, that's all of our dreams, is to be that muscular, you know what I mean? And I'm just looking at him like, fucking guy looks amazing, right? I mean, looks amazing. And then they're like, oh, 6 weeks later, back to the rope, he looks like a normal dude again. And you're like, what happened? So I'm Hollywood, I'm not accusing anybody of anything, not saying whatever you guys do, you do a great job of getting people to be huge, and then they go back to normal again. Hopefully it's not hurting anybody's internal organs and that kind of stuff in the long term. I hope all that is all good, because number one, he looked great. Number two, it looks like they do it well. Steroids are fantastic for keeping people alive. That's what they were made for. And if people are using them for other stuff, if you're not an athlete and you're not in a sport and you're not cheating anybody and that's not causing anyone any harm, who am I to tell you you should or shouldn't be doing it? Probably not the healthiest thing, but hey, man, you can say that, and I could say, like, I'm not a huge fan of people doing steroids yet. I go to bodybuilding shows, and most of those people are using them. And I go to the world strongman competitions, and almost all those guys are using them. It's the primal, gladiator, the Colosseum, I want to see this, mentality that's inside all of us. And, am I going to do that? I don't want to damage my body. So not to that level, but it's still something that I'm just kind of like, that dude's huge. I love his delts. His shoulders are blah, blah. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Don't think it's the healthiest thing to encourage people to do. But I also think when he talks about taking some time away and kind of being normal for a while, I think that's what he's talking about as well, if we can read, between the lines, etc. So he's back to like 210, super lean cut, and amazing. Still, you look at him, you're like, there's the David statue. Like, the guy's just amazingly built. Anyhow, I think you get the point. He does the climb. It's amazing, right? It's super cool. He's all pumped at the top. His arms, forearms, everything's shit. He looks amazing. And he climbs this rope all the way up 100 feet, hanging off this thing. Super, super cool, okay? All right, so then there's the memory one. Now, the strength section, talking about the strength and like how people need to lift. Atia drops this line in episode 2 or 3. I'm saving it for the end, okay? But it's the best line in the entire episode of the whole thing. There's all these amazing episodes. There's all these amazing lines, but there's one line in particular. When he said it, I went, I'm getting that tattooed on my back. Like, I want it everywhere. I want everybody to know, like, that's the line. So I'm saving that, okay, for the end. But it was amazing. And when you hear it, you're going to go, oh, and it's a good line, okay? All right. So now we get to this episode. And one of my buddies, he texts me, he goes, I bet you episode 6 pissed you off. Not at all. I loved it. I loved it because it's real, okay? It's real. So here's what happens. In this episode, they take Chris and they make him an old person. They have an entire facility. I don't know what this place is, but they like shut it down for 3 days, okay? They move in all these old people actors. They have a whole staff, a whole place. They create Timbering Pines or something like that. It's a retirement community. Everyone's actors, and he's like, no one will break character, okay? And so they put him in there, and they make him an old person, right? They put him in this suit, and this suit makes him, the glasses make his eyes blurry, the helmet restricts his ears so he can't hear as well. The thing around his neck makes his head stay forward and makes it where he can't move all that well. There are bungee cords around his elbows and his shoulders so he can't get his arms over his head. There's ones hooked to his butt and to his heels so his hamstrings are tight. It basically makes an older person who doesn't train, who isn't resistance training, who isn't doing anything. It creates and makes him live in one of those bodies, okay? And so they bring him into this facility, and everybody just patronizes the shit out of him. They're like, hey, Mr. Hemsworth, it's nice to see you today. How are you? And they're yelling at him, and they're right in his face to make sure they can see him. Oh, watch your step. Make sure you use the handrail. Like, it's just over the top, right? And everybody who talks to him, it's like, welcome to Whispering Pines or whatever it is, where we live every day to its fullest. And they like all give this like shitty little line, living every day like it's last or something like that. And even the guy that comes to take him to his room, he's like, hey, I'm Steven. And the girl's like, where we live every day, like say the line, and he's like, oh yeah, where we live every day like it's our last. And it's like, this is the environment that people go to, okay? And it's not bad, but it's not great either. They take him into his room, they make a picture, I'll show you in a second, where he's older, and then they have pictures of him and his family on the wall. And it's great, man, it's awesome. They have his hammer from Thor, they have it on his bedside, and they have a book that he allegedly wrote as he got older, and it's called Thorever. Like, I was laughing so hard, man. This was like one of the best scenes. They bring him into his room, and there's pictures of him and his family, and he like meets one of the presidents, and like, all this stuff. It's great. He wins an Oscar. I think they have a picture of him winning an Oscar, in an older role. But they show him through the aging process and his wife and his kids. And so now, they don't really say like, well, the wife isn't here anymore, but she's just not there. So he's staying in this place by himself. And he, experiences loneliness. He experiences not being able to move. They bring him into a class and they're like, we're going to do our step aerobics. And so he totally gets into it. He's doing the step aerobics. He's doing the Tai Chi, he's doing all this stuff. And he's just like, I can't move my arms. And they, the guy that's the host comes over and he's like, how are you feeling? He's like, I got to take the shit off. Like, he's like getting all frustrated with it. Right. And he's just like, this is miserable. Like I can't move the way I want to move. I feel like I can do things different, but my body's failing me. And he goes, now you're kind of getting an idea of what, the aging process is. You're not accepting that you're getting older. A lot of us, we fight it. And we're just like, I don't want to get old. And, age is only a number and it's all in your mindset, blah, blah, blah. And getting old sucks. And like, I always think of that line with Danny DeVito in Jumanji 2. And he's like, getting old sucks, kid. Don't know what to tell you. And at the end, he goes, getting old is the best. Right? He totally changes his mindset. Because he's like, you get to grow old with your friends and your family. You get to have all these experiences. But we're so focused on the now and the future and, what the cool shit is going to be. Not the now, the future, and just like all the things that we're going to do. And we're going to be in the future. And it's fast and it's go. And I got to work and I got to this. And that we're not like focused in the moment with what's in front of us, with the people around us. We don't just slow the fuck down and like enjoy this in life. And he comes away from this really getting to see the idea of like, I'm going to get to a point where everything's over with. And some of my memories, I'm not going to remember. He's looking at pictures and he's like, I hope that was a good night. And they're like, we do too. We hope it was, Like, this is part of the process, man. You're going to start losing memories. You're going to lose your eyesight. You're going to lose your hearing. Unless, and again, everybody's going to downward cycle, right? But are you going to plummet or is it just going to gradually taper? This is the difference between taking care of yourself and exercising and not, okay? So they take him to an art class. He gets to socialize. Everybody's kind of standoffish at the beginning. After day 3, they're all buddies. He's racing around doing electric carts, lark races with his buddies as they're driving around. Like it's super cute. It's really, really fun. And then on the second night, they have like prom night, okay? And they bring his wife in, but they dress her up like she's 90. They do her hands, they do her face, all this. And she gets up and she dances with them. And, they have all these things, the emotions you can see. He's really getting emotional while he's going through this, okay? So I forgot to mention, they first check him into this place. They give him a card. Here he is again. They give him a card. We'll talk about that in just a second. Here's the card, okay? They give him a card with a picture. And they're like, hey, here's your ID card. So that's what he thinks everybody sees him as, right? And they walk him in here. And as they're walking him in, this is his room on the side. And at the very end down there, there's a door. And the little attendant guy goes, don't go in there. That's off limits, right? You're not allowed to go in there. And you kind of see Chris like look at it. And there's a little flickering light over the top of it. Very dramatic, right? Very, very like Hitchcockish, right? And so you're like, wonder what's in there. And so fast forward 2 days, right? We go to the prom. And the wife is sitting at a table and they're like, hey, we hooked you up with a lady tonight, and her back's to him. So he comes over and he goes, hey, his Australian accent, g'day, whatever. And he's like, I think we're supposed to be dates. And she turns around and he recognizes her right away. And he gets really emotional as she's there. And he's like, I can't believe it. And, he's touching her face, all this. It's super, super cute. Anyway, he starts crying. Like you can see he really kind of gets in the moment. And at the end, she goes, I have to go. And he's like, what do you mean? And she just walks away. And that's it. And so he's really bummed that she's gone. You can tell he's been away from her for a couple of days. And so he gets done. He got to take all the stuff off, and they're like, we're done with the suit. We got one more big thing you gotta tackle, is we gotta decide now, what are we doing with you after you die? And so they bring him into this room and he has to try out coffins. And so he's like looking at each one and he's like, well, this cardboard one's compostable, like that'll all go back to the earth. The wicker one, we could do a Viking one and they could light me on fire, right? And he's going to each one and they go, well, we made this one specific to your body size. And so they make him get up there and lay down in it, right? And you can see he's super uncomfortable with it. And she's like the death doula. Like her job is to walk people through this process. And so they get done and you can tell he's a little uncomfortable, but he's understanding it. And she's like, I'll see you again soon. And he kind of looks at her sideways and he goes out the door. So day 3 comes up, he gets to do some stuff and it's the end of the day. He's sitting down out on the porch and the main dude comes over and he sits down and he goes, what do you think? And he goes, man, I'm going to change some things for sure. Like this has really been an eye-opening experience for me. And he goes, well, there's one more thing left to do. And Chris is like, what's that? And he goes, you got to walk through that door. And he goes, whatever happens when you walk through the door, just go with it. Don't fight it. Just go with it. And you can see Chris is like, all right, like he's totally game for everything that he's done to this point. And he recognizes that this will be, whatever it is going to be beneficial for him, etc. So he gets up and he walks over to the door and it's very good, editing and such. He opens the door and as he's opening the door, somebody grabs his arm and they pull him in, right? And they yank him in and they throw him down onto a stretcher. And there's 2 paramedics and they're like, we're losing him. And there's beeping and there's lights and they're putting shit on his face. And the guy's like pretending to do CPR and they're like, we got to hit him. And they zap him, right? And they run him out and they put him into the ambulance and they're driving him away. And next thing you know, absolute dark silence, right? I'm just revisiting him. I'm getting goosebumps. And going through this, absolute silence. And then he's laying down and then there's a candle lit up and there's the death doula. And she's like, this is it. You're at the end. And she starts walking him through and doing this kind of prayer at the end to say goodbye. And they're reflecting back on his wife and his kids and like just giving him these moments to think about the actual end, like making you recognize that the end will come and it's not something that you should be afraid of. And it's not something and they even say like, how do you feel right now? And he goes, I'm not afraid of this moment. Like I understand that this is a part of the process. It shouldn't be something that we're afraid of getting old. It should be part of the process. It's a graceful, beautiful thing that we shouldn't just constantly think about wishing we were young, wishing it was the past, that all of those things, living in the past, it robs you of the moment you're in now, right? And that's the thing I took from it the most was, yes, you have your daily life things that you have to do. We have to work. We have to, we have to do these things. And hopefully you're doing work that you love. I fucking love doing this. I love it, right? There's nothing I'd rather be doing. I wouldn't change anything about my career. I love it every day. I get up with a smile on my face and I know at certain points in my day though, I need to stop and I need to go hang with my kids. I need to be with my wife and we need to have date nights and we need to have kid dates and we need to have time to go out with my buddies and we need to have time to be by ourselves and we need to have time to have the entire family together. And it's like those moments, living in those moments, if we're constantly thinking about being younger, living in the past, remember how it used to be, you miss all the moments that you're in. And he articulates it very, very well and he goes through this whole process and then they say like, lights out, man, that's it. And she blows out the candle and there's just silence for a minute and then the main guy steps in and they turn on the lights, open the windows and they're like, what did you think of this whole process? And he goes, I've got some changes to make. And it's just quite an experience, man. Like I had to have experienced every emotion that you can experience in 6 episodes, right? I experienced every emotion. I cried. I laughed out loud. I got angry. I got sad, I got happy, I felt confused, I felt frustrated, I felt enlightened, I felt inspired. I mean, you go through all of these emotions. I bawled, like I had a moment at the end where I literally, like my body shook, I was crying so hard. And I had to kind of hide away from my kids. I'd get up, I'd walk around the corner in the family room while they're on the couch so they don't see me like completely losing my shit. I don't have a problem crying in front of people, but but it really got to me at one point. And it's the part, if you watch it, it's right after they pull him into the closet. Because I haven't been in that situation where it's like that dramatic, but I've been in that situation. Like I've been in a situation where someone says to you, you might not live through this. And it just brought me back to that immediately. Not only to be grateful for that being, 12 years ago and still being here, having only one lung, but having the ability to still be here and to function and do everything that I love. That's modern medicine. Without it, I wouldn't. But also on the other side of things, it's like, if I want to continue to live this long and healthy and happy life, I would have to make some changes too. And that's part of this, is maybe I don't need to work so damn hard all the time, even though I like it. It's living in the now, as Garth put it so well in Wayne's World. Live in the now, man. And that's still something that rings true and is brought back in this. So I encourage you to watch this. I think it's fantastic. And it's something that, here comes this line, I really want everybody to take away from. And I know you're going to be like, of course the strength guy says this. But here's Peter's line. He says, we don't stop moving because we get old. We get old because we stop moving. Okay? And I love that line. And he says it with such conviction. And the same can be said for, we don't stop conditioning because we get old. We get old because we stopped our conditioning. We don't stop exercising because we get old. We get old because we stopped exercising. And we definitely we don't stop lifting because we get old. We get old because we stopped lifting. Like all of this, a true strength and conditioning, health and wellness, whatever you want to throw into it, that mindset and practice on a regular daily basis has to occur, or else you're gonna get old as opposed to aging gracefully. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you enjoyed my ramblings and my ranting. And if you're not inspired to go and watch the show, I think I covered it pretty well, but damn, I think you'd be so happy if you went and watched it. It's great. It's really, really well done. I am a massive critic of shows like this. Take a look on my page. Have I ever recommended anything else? I mean, that's how good this was. And I thank Hemsworth for doing this. I believe he produced it and put a lot of his own money behind it to get it out there. And I applaud him for it. It was really good. It was excellent content. It was great experts that they featured. A great delivery, great editing, great film work. Coming from a cinematography major in school, I never finished, but I was a big fan of it. Like, it's just really well done from top to bottom and inspiring to boot. So there's my review, first one I've ever done. I hope you enjoyed it. And any comments or questions, feel free to fire them up down below. But I love and appreciate you all. As of right now, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. So let me say I'm thankful for all of you. Even if we've never met, we've never had any interactions, I appreciate the fact that you consume my videos, my content, and you help our page grow. And that means the world to me, as putting out this content and having people hopefully learn from it and change for the better is my dharma. That is my purpose. So thank you for being here and taking this in. And I love and appreciate you all. Take care. Happy holidays. Love you.